One of my students, Mac, used to work in IT help desk, and if you asked him how the job was going, he probably would have told you that it was fine. The money was good, the benefits were alright, and there was enough flexibility to make leaving that role feel like a risk that he didn't really need to take yet. But let me tell you what fine actually looked like. Resetting passwords, walking the same person through the same issue for the third time, fixing a VPN problem that will be back again next week, and closing one ticket and watching three more appear in the queue, right? This is life at Helpdesk. Then he would get to the end of the day and Mac would struggle to point out one new thing that he had learned or actually built in his IT helpdesk role. Now, I'm sure resetting somebody's password after they've ignored the warning for the fourth time is exactly why you got into technology, right? Mac is actually now a systems engineer at Amazon Web Services, making over $165,000 a year. And the most easiest way to tell that story is to say that Mac escaped Helpdesk and became somebody completely different. But that isn't actually what happened. Before Helpdesk, he had worked in Walmart customer service, so he understood how to speak to people who were frustrated, ask questions, and remain calm while somebody blamed him for a problem that he didn't create. Helpdesk gave him real technical context, so users, devices, accounts, permissions, systems, incidents, and in the thousands of strange ways technology breaks once real people start actually using it. So he kept all of those skill sets, but what changed was that he stopped allowing support to be the ceiling. He added the engineering layer, cloud infrastructure, automation, infrastructure as code, the ability to break a problem down properly instead of simply following the next step in a runbook. So if you're sitting in Helpdesk right now thinking that you have to start your career again to become a cloud engineer, then I want to show you why that is completely wrong. You are not starting from zero, but, and this is really important, you're also not automatically ready just because you have spent 3 years closing random tickets. Your experience becomes an advantage only when you move it into the kind of work companies are actually hiring cloud engineers to do. And with AI beginning to take more of the simple, repeatable support work, you do not have forever to sit there telling yourself that your help desk job is actually a safe place to wait. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly what transfers from help desk to cloud, what is still missing, and the roadmap that I would follow to move from IT help desk into cloud engineering without throwing away the actual experience that you've already built. So if you don't know me, hi, I'm Suleiman. I started my own career as an IT apprentice before moving through software engineering, cloud engineering, architect, DevOps, and consulting. I've spent 11 years working in technology, 7 of those working directly with cloud and AWS. Today, I run my own businesses across cloud and AI consulting, my software company, StudyTech.ai, and my academy. And I also have the #1 channel on YouTube on AWS and cloud engineering. And that's because I have real experience working in this industry, building real solutions like migrations, modernizations, infrastructure build-outs, AI systems and platforms for Fortune 100 companies, startups, government agencies, and I've helped more than 900 IT professionals, engineers, and career switchers build cloud expertise and move into roles across cloud engineering, infrastructure, security platform at companies like AWS, Microsoft, American Express, right? Now, with all of that undeniable proof out the way, help desk professionals are some of the easiest people for me to understand because you are already in technology. You can see the better jobs around you. You may be even supporting the engineers who have those roles. The frustration is knowing that you're so close enough to see the opportunity, but still not knowing how to cross that gap. So let's fix that today. Firstly, there is absolutely nothing wrong with starting in Helpdesk. For a lot of people, it's the first company willing to trust them around real systems. You learn what happens when somebody can't log in, DNS stops resolving, a laptop loses access to the network, permissions are wrong, and that is very useful experience. The problem is what happens after the first year or two, when the job stops teaching you as much, but you remain there because you've just become very good at it. You know the common issues, so you close tickets quickly. You know which users need extra patience. You know which manager is going to escalate immediately. You know which strange workaround fixes an old system that nobody wants to replace. And because you're reliable, the reward is normally just more tickets. So you become the person everybody asks for when the basic script doesn't work. But you still don't get ownership of the system creating the actual problem. You fix the access issue, but somebody else designs the identity platform. You reconnect the user to the VPN, but somebody else builds the network. You escalate the application failure, but another team investigates the infrastructure underneath it. That is why the job becomes so boring. It isn't because every ticket is easy, it's because you're permanently handling the effect while somebody else gets paid more to own the calls. Now look, if you genuinely love Helpdesk, the work pays you well, and you enjoy explaining MFA to somebody who refuses to read the words on their screen, then good for you. Keep going, right? But you did not click this video called How to Go from IT Helpdesk to Cloud Engineer because resetting password is actually your long-term dream, did you? Now, you clicked it because you can see the ceiling. You want more money, you want work that forces you to think, and you want the option to work remotely instead of being called over because somebody else's monitor isn't plugged in. And when something breaks, you want to understand the whole system rather than add another note to the ticket and send it to somebody else, right? Mac had to admit all of those things as well. The pay and the flexibility made his role feel like a 7 and 8 out of 10. But when he looked at the actual work, the lack of growth, and where the same path would take him 2 years later, it was actually closer to a 5 out of 10. That is a danger of Helpdesk. It rarely becomes painful enough to force you out, but it just becomes familiar enough to keep you there. Helpdesk is a brilliant door into technology. It becomes a problem when you turn that doorway into somewhere that you actually live. And now there's another reason that you need to take this very seriously. The exact work that you find repetitive is also the easiest work to automate with AI. The US Bureau of Labor Statistics tracks around 721,500 computer user support jobs, right? But user support roles are at -4 in terms of growth projected from 2024 to 2034. Computer occupational overall are actually growing in the same period. And the reason that BLS gives it is very clear. Companies are continuing to introduce automated troubleshooting tools such as chatbots, AI, which means fewer people are expected to be needed for routine user support roles. That doesn't sound like the end of Helpdesk because it isn't, but the same projection still expects tens of thousands of openings every year as people move roles or leave the workforce. But look at the actual direction. Technology work overall is growing, while the part where somebody describes a known problem and you give them a known answer is actually expected to shrink. That should not surprise anyone because Microsoft is already selling AI helpdesk agents designed to answer common questions, manage tickets, and resolve routine issues, such as password resets, basic software guidance, ticket classification, right? This is the exact kind of work an AI agent can follow from a knowledge base. But you might say, Suleiman, users barely explain what is wrong. An AI agent isn't handling the weird tickets that I deal with. You're right? The difficult cases still need someone who can investigate the incomplete information, understand the context, and take responsibility when the obvious fix doesn't work. The BLS actually makes that point as well. Automation can leave support specialists handling the more complicated cases. But if you put those two things together, if AI handles more of the simple tickets and the remaining people handle difficult ones, a company may not need the same number of entry-level support staff, and the people it keeps will need broader skills than simply following the same runbooks. So your entire job does not have to disappear for your current plan to become very dangerous. And this is what people misunderstand about AI layoffs. The AI does not need to sit in your chair and perform 100% of your job. It only needs to absorb enough of the queue for the company to decide that fewer people can handle what actually remains. So the easy tickets can disappear, the expected output can rise, and the standard for getting hired can move while you're still completing the same course that you started 6 months ago. So no, I am not telling you that AI will definitely lay you off by next Tuesday. I'm saying that building your entire future around the most repeatable layer of IT, while companies are openly trying to automate that layer, makes absolutely no sense. So the answer is not to compete with the chatbot at resetting passwords. The answer is to become the person who can build, secure, automate, monitor, troubleshoot the systems the chatbot and the rest of the business actually depend on. And this is where cloud engineering really comes in. Let's imagine a user sends you this ticket. The internet isn't working. That is obviously useless as a technical description, but you don't sit there waiting for the user to become an engineer. So you ask, what are they trying to access? Whether anything else works, when it started, and whether they are in the office or at home, or whether somebody else has the same problem. Then you narrow it down. Is it the device, the network, DNS, VPN, permissions, etc., etc.? That is troubleshooting, right? You took a vague report from somebody who didn't understand the system, asked better questions, tested the likely causes, and followed the evidence until you found something useful. Cloud engineers do that all the time. The systems are larger and the tools are different, but the way of thinking is actually very familiar. The same is true for identity and access. If you created accounts, managed groups, reset MFA, removed permissions, or dealt with somebody having access that they shouldn't have, you've already seen why identity matters to a business. Users, roles, policies, temporary credentials, least privilege, audit logs. The implementation might be different, But again, you're not learning from a blank page. Maybe, let's say, you're not designing enterprise networks, but you've dealt with IP addresses, DNS, ports, Wi-Fi, VPNs. Again, they transfer directly to what a cloud agent does, such as VPC, sublets, routing, security groups, connectivity, and AWS. A ticket from a CEO is not treated the same as somebody asking how to change their wallpaper, right? There's urgency, there's business impact, there's escalation, documentation. We learn how to communicate while the other person is frustrated. That matters a lot more than you think, because a cloud engineer can know every AWS service on the exam and still be useless in a real incident if they cannot ask a clear question, explain what's happening, or remain calm when the first fix fails. This is where Mac's customer service and help desk background helped him a lot. It was not impressive because Walmart has anything to do with AWS architecture. It was useful because he had spent years dealing with real people, real problems, and imperfect information before he added a deeper technical layer. So stop introducing yourself as somebody with no experience, right? You may have not been paid for a direct cloud title yet. That is definitely true, and you should never pretend otherwise. But paid support experience is still experience, right? Your job is to extend it and not erase it. Now, this is where I need to be very honest with you, because telling you that your skills transfer can easily become another comforting message that changes absolutely nothing. Helpdesk does not automatically make you a cloud engineer. You are normally working inside systems that somebody else has built. You may create an account, change a setting, or follow a recovery process, but you're not deciding how the environment should be designed, deployed, secured, monitored, and recovered when it fails. The biggest transition is moving from using and supporting infrastructure to actually creating and owning it. So you need stronger foundations in Linux and networking. You need to understand AWS beyond clicking around a console, identity, compute, storage, network, and database monitoring, security, and how those pieces work together in a real system. You also need infrastructure as code. So modern cloud systems do not want somebody manually creating the same environment 5 times and hoping every click was identical. They describe the infrastructure in code so it can be reviewed, tested, versioned, and deployed consistently. This was a major part of Mac's transition. In his own words, the academy opened him up to a completely different level of knowledge, including the automation and infrastructure as code that Amazon was actually looking for. What most people say is that I've used AWS, but what gets you hired is that you can operate like an engineer in a real AWS environment. You need Git so changes can be tracked and reviewed. You need to know enough about Python and scripting to automate repeatable work. You need monitoring and logs so you can understand what the system is doing. And you need to know how deployments work and what happens if a change breaks production. And more than anything, you need to make decisions about somebody giving you every single step. So Helpdesk often rewards following the correct process, whereas cloud engineering gives you a messy requirement where several answers could work and then ask you to choose one, explain the trade-offs, and take responsibility for the actual result. That is the gap that you have to close. It's not your intelligence, it's not your age, it's not the fact that your current title contains the word support. The gap is moving from following the system to owning the system. So if I was sitting in your position today, this is exactly how I'd make the move. Step 1, choose the actual job, right? Don't begin with another course, begin with the role. Cloud support, systems engineer, junior cloud, DevOps, blah, blah, blah. Your first move may not have the exact title cloud engineer, and that's completely fine. A systems or cloud support role with real access to AWS, automation, and production infrastructure can be a much stronger bridge than waiting another year for somebody to hand you the perfect title. You want to read enough job descriptions to find what keeps repeating. You'll normally see networking, Linux, AWS, troubleshooting, security, scripting, Git, infrastructure code. And that repeated work is then your curriculum. Do not try to learn all of the technology. Learn the gap between the job that you have and the jobs that you're targeting. Step 2 is deepen the foundations hidden inside your tickets. So use the issues you already see as a starting point. When someone can't connect to VPN, go deeper into networking, right? When someone can't access an application, go deeper into identity. When a laptop or server behaves strangely, use Linux and the command line. Learn how to investigate without clicking through menus until something actually works. So this makes the learning easier because every new concept attaches to a problem that you've already seen. Step 3 is learn the AWS foundation through one complete system. You do not need to memorize over 200 AWS services, right? You need a small group that appears in real systems again and again. But don't learn them as separate flashcards. Imagine a company needs a small internal application, right? Staff must sign in securely, backups if data is lost, right? A control way to release changes. Now go and build that system and explain how every single decision answers one of those needs. That really teaches you cloud engineering, right? Clicking through 20 disconnected labs teaches you where the buttons are and basically teaches you absolutely nothing. Step 4 is to rebuild everything with Terraform and Git. So once the system works, create it again through infrastructure as code. So push the Terraform in Git, use variables so the same design can create a development and production-like environment without copying everything, and add validation and a simple pipeline so a change is checked before it's actually deployed. Now, you do not need to become a full-time programmer. You need to become comfortable describe the infrastructure in a way that another engineer can inspect it, review it, and reproduce it. Then use Python or another scripting language to automate one small piece of the work. Now, you already know how boring repetition feels, so you have to learn how to remove it. Step 5 is to build a project that uses your support experience. So please do not copy another basic static website and expect the employer to imagine the rest, right? Build something where your support background is really important and it matters. Create a supportable internal application in a sandbox AWS account. Give it identity, monitoring, private networking, logs, backups, and deployment process. Then go and simulate and create an incident. Break a permission, block the network path, stop the application reaching database, generate a suspicious login attempt. Then use the logs and monitoring to find a problem, repair it, and write the incident notes as though another engineer has to understand what happened tomorrow. Now your project proves more than just I deployed something, right? It shows that you can build the environment, make it observable, troubleshoot it, and explain how it affects the user. That is exactly where your help desk experience becomes an actual advantage. Now, do not make the mistake of doing all of that privately and then wonder why nobody gives you an opportunity. I see people spend 6 months studying AWS in complete silence, right? Their GitHub is empty, their LinkedIn still makes them look like somebody who closes tickets, their CV is a list of certifications, but there's nothing showing how they think or what they can build. Then they go and apply for 50 jobs, hear nothing, and then decide that the market is impossible to get hired in. But why would a market know what you can do, right? You have hidden all of your evidence. You have to do the work and you have to make the work visible. That does not mean turning LinkedIn into your personal diary, right? Or pretending to be an AWS expert after one project. Put a code somewhere an engineer can expect it. Write a short explanation of the problem that you solved, record a walkthrough, explain one decision, one thing that failed, and what you changed. If it's left on your laptop, only one person knows you did it, which is you. If you make it visible, recruiters, hiring managers, and engineers, and people already inside companies you wanted to join can find a reason to speak to you. People call that luck when the message arrives, but they normally miss the months of work that gave the opportunity somewhere to actually land. Step 6 is to position yourself as an experienced support professional, adding cloud expertise. So aspiring cloud engineer with no experience isn't what you want to do. You want to explain the systems that you supported, the incidents that you handled, what changed because of your work, the documentation and automation that you created. Then connect that experience to the cloud work that you've built independently. So be honest about what was production experience and what was the project. You don't need to fake absolutely anything. A position statement could sound like this. I'm an IT support professional with experience troubleshooting identity, access network, and application issues for real users. I've extended that foundation into AWS by designing and deploying infrastructure with Terraform, adding monitoring and security tools, and testing how the environment behaves during failures. I passed an AWS exam and I'm looking for somebody to give me a chance. That is completely different, right? Step 7 is to enter the market before you feel completely ready. So if nobody responds, inspect the CV, the proof, and the roles that you're targeting. If interviews keep exposing a weak area, then fix that area. If you cannot explain your project without opening the README, stop building another project and understand the one that you already have. Because the market will give you information a course will never do. Brian Armstrong, the founder of Coinbase, has a useful way of putting this, right? Action creates new information. One proper project tells you which part of AWS you actually understand. One public walkthrough tells you whether you can explain the work. One conversation with a cloud engineer shows what your roadmap missed. One real interview shows you which answers fall under real pressure. So you do not need a perfect plan before you move, right? Moving is how you find out what the better plan actually is. Mac did not reach AWS because he memorized the perfect set of services. In his interview, rather than reaching for a standard answer, he questioned the assumptions in the technical interview, he worked out what was actually true, and he built his answers back up from there. Not somebody who could repeat what AWS does, but somebody who could think when the answer was obvious. Now, I know what you're going to say, but I don't have cloud experience. Yes, you don't have paid cloud experience yet, right? Fine, that is true. You do have paid experience solving technical problems for users, working inside business systems, handling incidents, communication when something goes wrong. Then you want to add cloud capability and visual proof to that. Do not throw the whole thing away because your employer used the wrong title, right? I can't code. There's another thing I hear people say. You do not need to become a software engineer before learning cloud, right? You need to know enough about scripting and infrastructure as code to automate work, understand what the code changes, and troubleshoot it when it fails. You already follow technical logic all day, right? Code is just another way of expressing that process. Then there is the certifications. An AWS certification can give you learning structure and help your CV. But if you already have one and nothing changed, another certification is not automatically the answer. So the employer still needs to see whether you can take a requirement, design a system, build it, secure it, monitor it, and explain why you made those choices. Because a cert proves that you passed the exam, it does not prove that you can do the job. And some of you are afraid that you'll need to take a pay cut or start at the bottom again. Your first move may be sideways. It may even involve a short-term compromise. I can't promise that every help desk worker walks straight in six-figure cloud role because that's simply not true. But staying in a role with a lower ceiling also has a cost, right? The BLS says the median support role is 60K, whereas Mac at AWS earning 165K. That's 105K more than you. Now, that's not a promise about your salary. It shows how much larger the playing field can become once your value is no longer limited to closing user tickets. Finally, some of you will say that the job is safe. The company likes you, you're good at it, and there will always be people who forget their passwords. Probably that will happen, right? But the question is not whether one ticket still exists in 10 years. The question is how many people the company needs to resolve it and what skills it expects from the people who remain. Do you really want to spend the next 5 years hoping users remain confused enough to protect your job? Or would you rather become the engineer who can build the systems properly and use AI to remove the rubbish work in the first place? Now look, most people watching this already knew that AWS, Linux Network, and Terraform will probably be involved. The real issue is why you've been thinking about the move for so long without making it real. You finish a difficult day and tell yourself that you build it after dinner, but you spend 8 hours dealing with tickets and last thing you want to do is see another laptop. So you move it to Saturday. Saturday arrives, life happens, and you watch part of the video because at least that feels like you did something. Then Monday comes and the queue takes over. You are judging each decision by how it feels tonight. Building the project feels difficult tonight. Applying before you feel ready feels uncomfortable tonight. Showing your work means somebody might look at it and tell you what is wrong with it. Staying in Helpdesk feels easier tonight. The salary comes in, you already know how to do your job, nobody's testing whether you're good enough to be a cloud engineer. But once you just follow both decisions forward for a moment, 6 months from now, you can easily have the same title, the same CV, and another course sitting at 70% complete. Reality is, it's more likely to be 10% complete. Meanwhile, the routine work keeps getting automated and the gap between what you support and what cloud engineers build keeps getting wider. The uncomfortable work that you could do is that the first project may be rubbish, right? Now you know where you are weak. You can fix it, you explain it, somebody questions one of your decisions, you improve it again, and that becomes a conversation, then an interview, and then perhaps a new opportunity. So the first part feels easier because the cost arrives later, but the second part feels harder because you have to pay the cost now and build the options afterwards. Now, I'm not pretending work and family are fake constraints. They are obviously real, but a real constraint changes the plan, right? It cannot be allowed to move the starting date forever. Mac's helpdesk job was not collapsing around him. The pay, the benefits, the flexibility made staying very easy. If he had kept calling that situation fine, AWS would have hired somebody else. The company would not have paused the opportunity until Mac felt ready. The market will keep moving while you keep making peace with your ticket queues. AI agents will keep getting better at routine work. Other support professionals around you will add cloud automation infrastructure. Somebody you work with today will make the move, and then suddenly you'll be looking at their announcement, wondering how they became qualified when you started in the same place. And then you'll be tempted to find the special reason that their result doesn't apply to you. They had more time, the company helped them, they knew some, they were naturally more technical. Maybe some of that is true, but different people have different advantages. But after another year, the most important difference may simply be that they spent the year building the transition and you spend it continuing to think about doing one. Doing nothing does not feel expensive because Helpdesk still pays you every single month. But nobody sends you an invoice for the cloud experience that you did not build. You pay quietly through the salary you didn't get, the interviews you weren't ready for, another year where your work became easier to automate while your next move remained an idea. Your employer is not going to solve that for you. They hired you to keep the users working and the ticket control under queue. If you do that well, they may happily let you do it for another 10 years. That is not on them doing something wrong, right? It is you expecting the job that you want to leave to build the career that you want next. So if you work in IT helpdesk and you want to become a cloud engineer, stop telling yourself that your current experience does not count. You already know how to take a vague problem, ask questions, troubleshoot it, and you've worked with users, identity, access, devices, network, apps, and business pressure. So you want to keep that, right? Then add what Helpdesk normally does not give you. So your Linux, your Terraform, your AWS, your deployment skills, and then you want to build proof around the problems that you already understand. So deploy the environment, break it, investigate it, explain what you do differently. Then enter the market and let a real interview show you what is still missing. That is the bridge. Mac did not go from Walmart customer service to AWS by pretending those years never happened. He added cloud engineering, automation, infrastructure as code, and stronger problem solving skills. Helpdesk gave him the technical context, and customer service taught him how to deal with people. So each layer increased the level of work that he could own. The useful part of his story is not that everybody watching will earn 165K or work at AWS. It is that Helpdesk was not a life sentence. Now, if you've only discovered cloud work this week, don't book a call with me and my team. Use the free content on my channels to make sure that this is something you genuinely want to do. But if you're already in Helpdesk or IT support, you decided that you want to get in cloud, you may have been doing some courses and projects, and you feel that your project is still not turning into interviews or offers, then you can just use the links below to apply for a fit call with my team. We'll look at your experience, the roles you're targeting, what you tried, and where the bridge is breaking. Then we can tell you whether our academy is actually the right way for us to help you to make the move. Whether you work with us or not, please stop calling yourself somebody with no experience. You are an IT professional who has spent long enough fixing the symptoms. Now you need to learn how to build the systems. And as always, I'm rooting for you. Go and become undeniable.